You want to bring your kids to Walt Disney World, but you are afraid of the toddler meltdown. In this video, I will be sharing my tips for how to avoid the Disney meltdown.
I'm Christina. I'm a traveler, a planner, and most importantly, a mom. I'm sharing my best tips to make traveling as a family a little less stressful. So put down your phone, pack your bags, and let's showcase the world.
So as I was writing my notes for this video, I definitely wanted to focus on toddlers, avoiding the toddler meltdown, but as I kept going, I realized more and more how this applies to everyone, even adults. So I noticed that when we went with my daughter, we did a lot of these things to avoid the meltdown when we went for her first birthday. And I found that the adult meltdowns were less because we were doing some of these things for my daughter and we didn't have any fights as adults. So really helpful no matter who is going on your trip. So the first thing I want to say when you are dealing with the little ones is you want to stick as close to a routine as possible. You know, it's super hard when you're planning your meal time 6 months in advance, but you definitely want to make sure that you're eating around the same time you would eat at home, you're napping the same time you would nap at home, and the closer that you stick to your routine, the less likely you're going to have overtired, overhungry kids, and that's what causes meltdowns. So what I did was, as we got closer and closer to our trip, I kind of made sure that our routine was basically what it was going to be in Disney World. So looking forward, when I was planning our reservations, I made sure they were about the time that they would be at what I thought they would be 6 months from then with my daughter. And if they weren't, I changed our routine at home to match our Disney trip. So slowly, in 15-minute increments, until we got to our dinner time to be around what our dinners were planned in Disney World. Another thing is to get to the park early. If you do have a little one, they probably get up early. Even though they get up early, doesn't mean you can get them out the door early. I know that struggle all too well. It can take way longer than you expect to get out the door, but do get moving a little bit early. Make sure you have your backpack packed the night before, your clothes laid out so everyone can just get ready quickly in the morning. I like to have breakfast in my room, so you can make oatmeal with a coffee maker, you get some milk, get some cereal, Pop-Tarts, anything that's a grab and go. You have that in your hotel room in the morning, and then you head to the parks and you don't have to worry about eating until snack mid-morning. So one of the other things I love to do is get baked goods from a restaurant in Disney World. I love to get the school bread in Norway at Epcot and bring that with me back to my room. I get it as I'm leaving Epcot for the night, and then put them in to-go containers, and then the next morning we have school bread for breakfast. You can do the same thing with the patisserie in France or any of the bakeries, just having that ready for in the room for you the next day. One of the reasons I love staying at Coronado Springs is they have these massive donuts, so we would get a box of donuts and we would bring that to our room. Not the healthy meal that's used to, that we have our routine, but we were at least eating at the time that we would. So having breakfast in your room will make your getting out the door a little bit faster, and you can get to the park early. What I mean by getting to the park early is getting there about 30 minutes before park opening, sometimes even an hour. So kind of watch what times the parks are opening. Right now, they're opening about an hour early. So you want to get there for when they open so that you can be one of the first in line when the attractions start running. And right now attractions are running about 30 to 45 minutes prior to opening. So it's important to get there early, and you can get more done in the first 2 hours the park is open than like the entire rest of the day. So you don't have kids sitting out in the sun, sitting out in the heat, sitting in long lines. You can get your attractions done, and then you can spend the afternoon doing something relaxing. One of those things would be taking a midday break. I recommend this to everybody, whether you have a toddler or not, but you definitely want to honor the afternoon nap. This again helps with adults as well. Even if you don't nap, just showering makes you feel so much better after being in the Florida heat. So take your midday break, go back to the hotel. If you do have a little one, I do love staying at the Contemporary Resort because you can walk back and forth between the Magic Kingdom. So it's super, super simple to get back for nap time. And then you also want to stick to bedtime as well. I know that that's a little difficult with fireworks and things like that at nighttime, but if you want them to be able to operate the next day, then you definitely want to make sure that you're sticking to bedtime. What I usually will do is about halfway through our trip is I'll do kind of a special night where they can stay up past their bedtime, and that special night we'll do the fireworks, and the next morning we don't have an early morning, so we don't plan to go on the parks until later in the afternoon, or we just have a reservation at the resort. To kind of go with that, I'm going to go into my next tip, which is the more park days you have, the less park time per day. Definitely works out better. I know a lot of people with young children who like to say, you know, we're going to go for 5 days, but we're only going to go to the parks 2 days. And you can jam it all in because you want those rest days in between. It's better, in my experience, it's better to extend your park days. And once you get to a certain number of park days, your park ticket isn't that much more. It's like $20 a day more to go from like 4 to 5 days. So it really isn't a huge financial thing to do this. So you want to add more days in the park, but spend less time. So maybe you spend the morning in Magic Kingdom on day 1, and day 2 you spend the afternoon in Epcot, and then day 3 is a morning at Animal Kingdom. So you aren't spending morning to night in the park, but you're kind of spacing it out over days so that you have that relaxation time, but it's not one relaxation day and then everything else is like jammed into 2 or 3 days. You want to make sure you're spreading out that park time to let kids not that sensory overwhelm, the crowds, that it just like is a nice little reprieve from that, and you're able to get in everything that you want to do. So you want to choose your resort based on what park you'll be spending the most time in. That definitely will help, because when you're going back and forth for bedtime and naps and all of that, if you're spending more time in Hollywood Studios, you want to be on the Skyliner or at an Epcot area resort so you can walk. If you're spending more time in Magic Kingdom, you want to be on the monorail or, like I said, Contemporary Resort. If you're spending more time in Animal Kingdom, you want to look at the Animal Kingdom Lodge or Coronado Springs or something that's close by. Something you definitely want to think about is strollers. Whether your kids are out of strollers or not, you might want to consider bringing one if it is a lot of walking, and it will give your kids a little bit of a break. If you don't think you need one and you do end up wishing you had one, you can rent one from the park that day. But definitely think about strollers, even if your kids don't use a stroller at home. It is a lot of walking. You're doing like 13 miles a day, something crazy like that. So you want to make sure that your kids aren't exhausted from walking on top of everything else. You want to keep your kids hydrated. What I like to do is we get water delivered to our resort. So when we get our groceries delivered for breakfast, we also get water delivered. We get a case of water. We put them in the fridge. And when we go to the parks, we put 1 water bottle per person in the backpack, and we carry 1 water bottle per person. So we have 2 water bottles. And that will usually get us an hour or 2 into the day, and then we'll buy water bottles at that point. So we're not spending a ton of money on water bottles throughout, but we're probably spending two water bottles per person per day versus the 6 or 7 that you would be doing. So it will save you a nice chunk of change, and you can keep your kids hydrated. You can get free water cups at any quick service resort. They're about this big, and the water does not taste that great. So that's why we like doing water bottles and recycling them. We have tried the refillable bottles, but we could never really find a place to refill them. So what we like to do is we bring the 2 water bottles in the morning. We buy a water bottle before, kind of in between the middle of the day, and then when we go back for nap, we bring 2 more water bottles with us. So we're really only buying a water bottle in the morning per person and a water bottle in the evening per person. Get your older kids involved in the planning. I know I've been talking about toddlers a lot, but the more you get your older kids involved in the planning, they'll be more likely to do things that they don't want to do, so for other people. So what I recommend to my clients is that if you do have preteens or maybe even younger, depending on your kids, but letting them plan a day. So each person gets to plan a day of your trip. So one day is mom's day, one day is your partner's day, one day is your kid's day, and if you have another kid. So that way, if they're doing the things that their sibling wants to do on one day, they know that they already had their day and or their day is coming. So they're more likely to go along with it. And the more that you involve them in the planning, the more excited they're going to be, the more they're going to want to do things. Don't wear new shoes. Break them in before. Don't add something on top of everything else. So make sure that neither you or your kids are wearing new shoes, because they are going to end up getting blisters, and then that's going to make for a miserable experience. Also, make sure you bring backup pairs of shoes. For some reason, my husband has not grasped this concept yet. His sneakers will get wet during a rainstorm or a water ride, and then he will have to wear his wet shoes because he didn't bring a second pair, and is miserable and complaining and all of that stuff. But if you have extra pairs of shoes, just swap them out and let one dry while you're wearing your new shoes. It's super easy. I typically will throw flip-flops in the backpack for me and my daughter, so that if our shoes do get wet, we don't even have to wear them home. Or if we're going on a water ride, we can just change into our flip-flops before we get on the ride. So that is a good tip right there. I talked about bringing a stroller. Even if your child doesn't use one, you know, get a cheap $20 umbrella stroller and leave it there. It's worth the expense of it. Except with the umbrella stroller, you can't really take advantage of the storage. So you might want to get something else just so you have the storage. But if you have an umbrella stroller, you don't care if you leave it, if it gets lost, or anything like that. So you don't have to be using it all times. It doesn't have to be weighing you down, but you have it in case you need it. One way to avoid the souvenir meltdown is to have pixie presents. So pixie presents would be, you know, go to Target, go to the Dollar Spot or the Dollar Tree or Amazon and get a bunch of Disney toys that are much better priced than in the park. And if your kid won't see something that they want, just kind of explain to them, you know, Tinkerbell's bringing their present tonight. Let's see what she brings before we buy anything. And so that way that you can usually get them off of the souvenir that they wanted. If you have older kids, a gift card would be a great option for them. Teach them a little bit about budgeting. And if they only have a $50 gift card, then that's all they have to spend on souvenirs. Don't even add that to your budget. A lot of times you can, you have parents asking, or you have grandparents and aunts and uncles and everyone asking what to get your kids for Christmas or their birthday. Instead of getting them things that you're just going to end up throwing away, have them get them gift cards to use on their trip, and they can use those for snacks and souvenirs as well. Watch for cues. So if your child is starting to get whiny, or you're seeing that they're getting hot or tired or hungry, make sure you're watching for those clues and don't push them. So take a break if you need to. Don't stick to the schedule, because that's where you're going to have meltdowns, and that's where it's going to become less enjoyable. So you want to have a plan, but not an itinerary, is how I usually handle things with my clients. I'll give them a plan on what to do first, what to do second, and I also give them tips on how to adjust if their plans should change. It's not a at this time you do this, at this time you do that, because when you do that, then you get very, very focused on keeping to the schedule and not paying attention to someone needs bathroom breaks, or someone just needs to sit in the shade for a few minutes. You might miss your fast pass, but that's okay. It's better to miss your fast pass than have a meltdown. So don't try too hard to stick to the plan. It's usually in those unplanned moments that magic happens. So that's where I would love for you to focus, and I would love for you to really enjoy making those memories together and not having a trip full of meltdowns. So those are my tips for avoiding the meltdown. I promise you they work for any age, including adults. And I hope you remember to take a break from the busy.
Need help planning your next family vacation? Visit us at showcasetheworld.com to request a quote or schedule a free vacation consultation. Want more great travel tips? You'll find those there too.